So there are three people running for the leadership. The first one is David Egan. He's a sitting MLA and former head of Friends of Medicare. We've got Rachel Notley, also a sitting MLA. She is well known in the legislature for her criticism of Tory social policies. And we have Rod Loyola, who is a local community organizer and currently the president of the non-academic staff union at the University of Alberta.
Right, so he's not sitting in the legislature.
Correct.
Right now. Okay. Well, so how has this party's 5-month leadership race compared to other political leadership races that you guys have watched in the past?
There was a race.
Oh, really? Yeah.
Well, that's just the NDP is being swamped, overtaken by events. The PC leadership race, and now that they're have a new premier, we've been following the announcement a day work from Jim Prentice. Also, the NDP, of course, their fourth place party in the legislature, and they didn't have a very interesting race. Like, they all agree with each other. If you go to any of the debates, the so-called debates, they're more like forums where they discuss how they basically agree on the big issues of the day. So I think that this is leading up to, I would say that this is Rachel Notley's. She will likely, I think, win this, more than likely. She's been doing announcements every day. It's almost like she's the leader already. This announcement a day, at least from her campaign, talking about issues, health care, hospitals, minimum wage, things like that. So I think we're all gearing up to see her get a coronation on Saturday.
You know, it's interesting, Sarah. People often say that they want to see more civility in politics. They want to see more thoughtful discourse in politics. They lie. That's not actually what people want to see, because that's what the NDP have given them. I mean, the poor New Democrats, they've had 3 very thoughtful candidates with carefully crafted policy positions. But Graham's right. They haven't engaged in mudslinging. They haven't engaged in personal attacks, and they haven't gotten a lot of attention. Now, you might argue, in fact, that since they're the fourth party in the legislature, that they're getting just as much attention as is their due. On the other hand, they're a fourth party with a very interesting moment in history, because the Liberals, who are the third party, are in a kind of a free fall. The caucus is in disarray. There are people leaving the caucus. There are people who are talking about maybe leaving the caucus. Under the leadership of Ross Sherman, the Liberals have really struggled. And the New Democrats are, according to all the polls, doing extremely well in Edmonton. In some polls, they're leading in Edmonton. So this is an opportunity for them. And if Rachel Notley can win convincingly and come out of this with the party united behind her, they could be at a moment where they could strive, if not to be the official opposition, to be the party that holds the balance of power in a minority legislature, which is a not improbable scenario.
So just laying out the straight ahead facts, we heard from Mandel that there are about 700 so-called bed blockers in Alberta hospitals. So those are people who are too sick to go home, but who are not sick really enough to be in hospital, but they don't have appropriate long-term care or supportive living facilities for them to go to. So 700, that was the number, that was the target that Mandel wants to get out of the hospitals and into more appropriate facilities. They announced 464 now new beds. Now, when I say the word new, I don't mean brand spanking new. I mean, they have been built, they were ready. All they needed to do was fund them, and they found the money in the budget to fund them this year.
And so basically, like, to staff them, to have people to provide the care?
Yes. I mean, when I say fund a bed, I mean all of those things together. So that's going to cost about $10 million this fiscal year, and then $33 million a year going forward for those 464 beds. And then he also announced $60 million in existing funding to expedite construction of 300 additional beds, which gets us to that $700 number. Or pardon me, to that 700 number.
Is it really this simple? I mean, this has been such a chronic problem in Alberta. If it was this simple, why was this not done before?
Well, there's 2 issues. One is they have done things like this before and then reversed it. So they have tried to open up long-term care beds before, and then they shut them down. So it's been sort of a seesaw. If you talk to the unions, they've been talking about this. Another thing is, it's interesting when you actually ask Prentice and Mandel to explain why wasn't this done before. They say, we weren't here. And it's always a case of, this is a brand new government. We weren't here before. I talked to Mandel on Monday, sit down with him for half an hour about health care and some of his plans. Why wasn't this done before? He goes, I don't know. I wasn't here.
Right.
So
and I guess
this is sort of their comeback. So you push them now on some of the issues that happened before. They kind of plead ignorance because they weren't here, even though it's the same government. You got a new premier and a new minister of health. they claim ignorance. They don't know what actually happened.
You know, Sarah, there's an old Jewish folktale with which I'm sure our new health minister is intimately familiar about a man who goes to the rabbi and says, my house is too small. So the rabbi counsels him to bring in all his various farm animals. And then the man goes back to the rabbi and he says, oh, my house, it's terrible. And the rabbi says, take the animals out. And the man does. And then magically his house feels really big and airy. And he says to the rabbi, thank you. Now my house is just the right size. That is how the Tories manage in this province. They shut down the beds, and then people say, oh, it's terrible, so they reopen the beds, and people, oh, well, good, thank goodness, that solved the problem. But that doesn't actually make the house any bigger.